Yeah, baby. Yeah. The Mac is back. Back with another video. Hello, the initiated. My name is Marcus Junikala, and today we're checking out Frames by Void and Vista. Now, I am beyond excited for this one because my first contact point with this company was Folds. They sent me an email and said, "You want to check it out?" It looked like something that was right down my alley. So I thought I'd give it a shot, and I was blown away. And I ended that video, I think, saying something along the lines of them being one of my favorite sample library developers after that demo. And I mean, that's still the case. We'll see how that statement holds after this one. After that, after Folds, we've checked out Strands, which was their first library release, which is also great. But very interested in seeing what this turns out to be like. This is a very blind demo. I have not played this at all. In fact, I do not know what this even is. That's how blind we want to go into this. But let's try and get this camera into some kind of a focus. First things first, let's open the manual here and try and learn what this actually is. As of today, we don't have a website page on this because this is unreleased. I think it will release today at some point, but we shall see when that happens. But hopefully the manual gives us enough info. So Frames is a versatile sample-based instrument for contact. Okay, I knew that. Featuring a unique and eclectic collection of prepared instruments, resonated objects, and crafted sound design. Okay, so seems like it's a selection of things pulling under some, presumably a philosophy of sorts. So not like, Folds was kind of voices. Strands was like a mix of things, but this sounds a bit more similar maybe to the Strands approach. Information, 16 gigs, big. So, in terms of size, that wasn't a comment on the size. Footprint-wise, that's not very big at all. So pretty happy with that, as long as it obviously sounds great. 40 different sound sources. That's a lot. 2-layer sound design engine. Cool. NKS and Contact Player compatible. Full NKS2 implementation. I don't even know what that is yet. Contact 7.10 or higher. And they did mention to me in the email that apparently this works best in Contact 8. So there you have it for whatever reason. Please be aware, native access 2 is required to install our products. So remember that. Snapshots. Frames features a large snapshot library divided into 3 categories. We've got highlights, designed, and foundations. So highlights, I actually really like this approach. And by the way, if you don't want to go through this manual with me, look at the timestamps. You can skip ahead to the playing, or if you don't want to hear me talk at all, which is pretty a reasonable request, check out the no talking video version of this demo as well. So yeah, highlights. I really like this approach because I understand that as a sample library developer, you probably do struggle in terms of like, how do you give your customers or potential customers like a quick, fast, best of type of look at things. So I think this is a pretty solid approach. I appreciate it very much, because otherwise there's the fear of like how much of the good stuff is going to get lost in folders that describe what those things are, but a lot of people never get to. And if I remember correctly, I think the highlights are pulled from the other folders, so they're still in the other folders, So that's a kind of best of both worlds. So highlights shines a light on the full breadth of Frame's capabilities. Designed folder, a library of unique snapshots which make the most of all Frame's features, taking the sound sources and expanding them into new sonic territory. Okay, so kind of like sound design stuff. And foundations, a focused set of snapshots in which Frames is finely tuned to best capture the original spirit of each of its sound sources. Cool. Pro tip, all of our snapshots come with the mod wheel mapped to several of Frame's sound design features. Cool, good to know. So snapshots, pretty basic. They are in the drop-down folder over there, like they are usually. Main page. 8 performance controls can be expanded for access to deeper sound design options. So dynamic, filter, motion, ensemble, lo-fi, character, space. Nice. And then, okay, so morph is actually considered to be a performance control. Makes sense. Makes complete sense. Mixes the two sound sources in a way set by the fade style buttons underneath. Okay, cool. And I think the other ones are pretty self-explanatory. Yeah, motion is an LFO modulation. Cool. Main page. Highlighted below are the performance control modulation amounts. These indicate how much a modulation source is offsetting a particular control. Okay, cool. Yeah, so it kind of sets the scale for the drift or the amount. Excuse my personal terminology here, but main page. At the bottom of the main page are the sound source, pitch, envelope, and fade style controls. Makes sense. Zone shift. So apparently this is a new feature. Third pitch mode at the bottom of the main page is called zone shift. This is a unique sound manipulation technique only possible with multi-sampled sound sources like those found in Frames. I feel like every time I'm supposed to say Frames because it's capitalized, I should be like, Frames! Or, I don't want to shout in the mic, but something like, Frames! There you go. I promise we're not going to do that again. Well, let's be honest, I can't promise that. It allows the creative timbre and rhythmic effects of pitching samples to be explored without changing the perceived pitch of note. Ooh, this is really nice. So I know a lot of people, especially in the genres of, well, lo-fi or kind of droney music, dark ambient, any kind of cinematic, darker stuff are pretty familiar with the glory of pitch shifting. And it's like I really like to use even just, what's wrong with our camera today? Come on, can you try? Yeah, use pitch shifting, even in Contact, in slight ways, just to influence like with percussive sounds. But a lot of people do tune their drums to their track, and I think that's in general a good idea. In terms of how you tune them, that's a different conversation. But I like to fine-tune that stuff even in Contact to match the thing that I'm working on. But I'm presuming this means sort of more radical, stylized things. But a lot of people know that if you pitch shift something down, it suddenly sounds really, really freaking cool. So I'm presuming this goes for that kind of like more stylized, heavier pitching approach. I want to read this again because this is kind of a heavy sentence. Allows the creative timbre and rhythmic effects of pitching samples to be explored. Okay, yeah. So basically it's changing the audible pitch that you hear. It's keeping that where you want it to be, but it's changing, pitch shifting it first and probably then pitch shifting it back to the pitch, which creates, it can, like they say, it changes the timbre of the sound and a bunch of other things. Not sure what they say rhythmic effects. Maybe they're talking about like audible things that become audible in a sample. For example, when you slow things down, you start to hear certain artifacts. I don't know what they're referring to, but okay. When at 0, the expected sample is played for the incoming MIDI note. When set to positive values, samples for lower notes are pitched up to play the pitch of the incoming MIDI notes, resulting in a brighter timbres and faster movement. Yeah, so that's probably referring to the actual waveform speed, because that would happen. When set to negative values, samples for higher notes are pitched down to play the pitch of the incoming MIDI note, resulting in a darker timbre and slower movement. Okay, makes sense. Cool. That's a technically very true and fine way of saying it, but maybe more technically inclined, which is to be expected and appreciated. But zone shift mod controls the amount of zone shift changes for each incoming note. Okay, mod source is either random per key press for a constant sense of variation or linked to a velocity for playable control of timbre variation. All right. Expanded controls. Let's see if we have... Yeah, this is pretty basic stuff. Envelope. Sound sources. Okay, so 40 different ones. These are split into 5 categories: instruments, objects, affected, yes, textures, and waves. All right, so it's just one way to find out what that means to actually go in there. Dynamic section. Dampening velocity, soundstage spread, makes sense. Filter, motion, okay. Ensemble. So ensemble is again something found in folds, for example. Creates 2 additional voices for each of the currently played notes, the level of which are controlled by the performance control. Although a simple concept, when combined with the ensemble note and cascade controls, this allows for anything from subtle thickening to the creation of complex rhythmic and harmonic gestures. We highly recommend experimenting with these controls in combination with the cascade control in the envelopes page to create a sense of call and response in your sound. Ooh, that's a very interesting way of saying it. Okay, cool. I think this sort of wraps up what I was wondering and pondering about. I don't want to spend an excessive amount of time on this. And lastly, they say, we hope you enjoy frames. I also hope that to be the case. Follow us online for more. And you should. I do want to mention they did this really cool making of video of folds. So if you're into sample libraries, which you probably are since you're here, and if you're into the kind of behind the scenes or making off type of content, go check it out. It's a really wonderful piece of content. So do give them a follow. Now, first things first, Void and Vista did send me this copy, so thank you to them for doing so. That being said, all opinions are my own, both in good and bad. I haven't been asked to say anything one way or the other, nor would I ever do that. In terms of the agenda for this video, we are going to just try and play as much of this as possible. And I want to demonstrate to you what this thing sounds like, coming right out of the box. We're not going to do super detailed technical stuff. You should go probably watch Void and Vista's walkthrough video, which I understand should be coming out soon, or is already out by the time of making this video or releasing this video. And I'm sure other YouTubers do more technical stuff like that. That being said, if I find something interesting technically that I want to check out, then I'll do that. But for the most part, I just want to play as much of this right out of the box as possible for you, so you can make your own decision about whether this is for you or not. In terms of what you'll be hearing today, it's only frames in action. I don't add any effects on top of that at all. The only thing I have is a limiter on my master bus to make the level more consistent for this video, so that it's somewhat enjoyable and easy to consume on YouTube, since the level won't be super, super low. That being said, the limiter is set to be as transparent as possible, so you should have very minimal, if any, coloring. If you do hear any clipping, I'll certainly let you know what caused it, but most likely it's the limiter, in case I missed that. And certainly if it's not the limiter, I'll let you know that the library is doing it, but I have my doubts about that. Does that cover the basic stuff? I think so. So going in here, in Contact, this just opens up as an NKI. There's nothing more there. We did touch already on the library folder structure when reading the manual, but indeed it's set to be in 3 folders. You got the highlights, which is kind of like the best of, designed, which is kind of sound designy apparently, and has a lot of stuff in here, and 8 subfolders, and then foundations, which is in 4 folders of instruments, objects, affected, textures. So, as said, unfortunately, we cannot play all of this, because otherwise the video would be 20 hours long, and you don't have the time for that, and I don't have the time for that. So we're going to have to select sounds as per my interests, probably. I'll try and make it as interesting as possible, but we'll do the entire highlights folder, because I think that's fair and justifiable. And then we'll do a bit from everything else. So I'll select a few based on pretty much names, and we'll go from there. I do again want to touch on appearances here, the user interface here. I personally love these type of approaches. They're super, first of all, pleasant to look at, which for me is a big deal when dealing with instruments, because if I am to use this for hours on end and write music with it, I want the experience to be pleasant and hopefully even inspiring, because I respond very sensitively to what I see, and some people do, some people don't, but I like to be aesthetically pleased when I look at something, and this is stylistically really beautiful. I'm going to move the mod wheel here just so you see a bit of the how the design changes. This is much more than just stuff that looks cool. This is it does look really, really cool, but it does also, as you see, display changes in what's actually happening in the instrument. So it's kind of combining best of both worlds. So obviously you can see here the parameters on our different, what did they call these? Performance controls, I think. They are changing over there, so you can see how they're changing. And if you want to adjust the drift of those or the scale of those effects, that's cool. I believe this is also introducing some of that ensemble effect, which is represented in these kind of reflections on the side, I believe. And then obviously down below, we can see the morph, blend, move around. So I really love this. It's super cool to look at, super inspiring, and actually informationally awesome. So I think this is a company that's at the forefront of this type of stuff. Looks great, works great, and is, really, really cool stuff. And this was already, I was super impressed by folds, because, yeah, it looked fantastic, and this seems to do the same thing. Anything else here? I just want to click on the instrument sources here. We're probably not going to dive in here because we probably want to do this, mostly explore these through the folders. So yeah, but let's start with highlights. And as I said, we'll go through all of these. And like I said, this is completely blind to me. I will say that they, in the manual, they didn't kind of describe maybe the philosophy behind this. I'm sure it's on the website once it gets live. Let's actually, dare I check if it has. Nope, still not live here. But yeah, what I wanted to say is, I would love to know a bit about the philosophy behind this. Like, what is the principle? What is like the thing that brings all of the content here together? What is the vision? What is the, philosophy behind it? But we don't have it, so we'll just have to play and find out for ourselves. And it will be interesting to see whether that matches my perception, matches what they, state it to be. But in terms of looking at this, we have so many different sources that this is kind of like, it's a philosophy under which they sample different instruments and then put them together in this engine in a specific way. So, but highlights folder, first preset, this one is called Step into Frame. Really cool. I'm actually, surprised to hear a piano here. Super playable, which is really nice. I especially like this low end of the mod wheel here. The higher end is nice if you want to do like big washes or build-ups. But yeah, very expressive. Very nice. Let's go to the next preset. Okay, so a lot of stuff here. Again, what I like, which I do remember from Folds, I think, is that, which I think is creatively really cool and puts you in a different headspace and frame of mind, is that when you open a typical sample library, you play the first sound, and when you push up the mod wheel, you can expect that sound to stay the same, but just be kind of more, and sort of, more maybe distortion, more reverb, open filter, things like that. Not here. Like this goes beyond that, because you get a completely different sound altogether. You're like, obviously, like they say, morphing between different things. But that's creatively puts you in a very, very different mindset. It's like, oh, okay, how can these two things play together? What can I write with these? So I love first of all, the courage and the creativity behind that, because that's super, super useful for at least a composer like myself, who's not only, I don't just want great sounding tools, but also things that inspire me and give me ideas, and this certainly does. So I praise that, and also also liking the character. Like lo-fi is not the exact right word, but it's a bit of like that darker lo-fi aspect that that Folds, for example, has. I'm very pleased to hear that here as well. So a bit of continuity there, and kind of weaving the Void and Vista sound together here between the libraries. Also, the imaging here is really, really nice on this lower end mod sound. It's kind of like there's obviously, in a way, you can say it's a simple pan effect, or a simple kind of not tremolo. That's not fair, but yeah, like an automated pan thing. But it's super well imaged. It's not just like going back and forth, but it feels like it's sort of embedded in there. It's sort of a bit deeper, and it sounds like it's in some kind of a socket or something like that. And that's some of the really cool stuff that I enjoyed in Folds, that it does have that extra dimension and detail in the sound space and the soundstage department. This one is Clearing the Forest. Yeah, again, same thing. In a way, you could say, oh, it's just more reverb and pulling back the transient or the percussive elements. Yes, but no, it's still like I'm immediately thinking creatively. Like, oh, how can I move between these things? How can I tell a story with that? And the immersiveness of that is extremely, extremely impressive. Like, it's super engaging, and it has this kind of cinematic heft and soul that's really, really difficult to create. This one is called Annihilation Moment. That's what I call it. Well, let's not go there. Again, like these, they have so much. Like that sounds like I'm listening to a score already. It doesn't sound like a good, decent sound for cinematic stuff. That sounds like a soundtrack. That's really, really awesome. Also, here talking about the visual feedback here. Obviously, as we moved this, we didn't hear much of a change. But again, it's visually very easy and fast to see why, because we can see that the ranges here, for example, on this. I don't have the term for it, but you can see that it's not very much. So that's super convenient and nice. Lactic choir. What the heck? Again, what's really cool about this is that these are just like completely different aspects, like completely different sounds in a sense. Obviously, they're connected, but I love the creativity here, and I love how it forces you into thinking about your parts differently and how to build it. Even if you don't want to use one of the sounds, it immediately makes you think about the sound a lot more. It's like, ooh, I don't want to do that, but I want to do this. So I wonder if I pair this with another source instrument here, for example. So that's kind of like a hidden big perk to me in terms of that. It makes you think creatively fast. Whereas if this was one of those simpler presets of here's the sound, it's kind of chill, muted, and as you push it, it gets more aggressive. That is, you already know that that's going to happen. Whereas with this one, you really don't know what's going to happen. But as soon as it happens, I know, okay, actually, let's do that, or let's not do this. And the value of that in a creative process cannot be underestimated. This one is called Heavy Hearted. That's gonna be a walk away for me. I mean, it's already so beautiful here. This is a great example of like of another approach. Like there's a beautiful the sound at the end of the mod wheel range, beautiful, kind of a lo-fi mix of pad meeting a key type thing, and then just a slight tasteful noise in there just makes it so deepens the mood and the atmosphere there beautifully. That's super, super nice. Yeah, I'm gonna do it. That's just the level of sound design ability there. I mean, first of all, the source samples. Let's have a okay. So it's macaroni, apparently, of course, because that makes for a good sound. Ricochets. I mean, just the kind of the grindy aspect of it is so pleasant. Like it has that disturbing, unnerving edge to it because it is that kind of crunchy, like someone is chewing on bone. But it's so brilliantly captured and mixed because it doesn't become audibly or the auditorily unpleasant, like purely sonically speaking. Like it will feel unnerving, but it doesn't annoy the ear. That's really difficult to do. Beautiful. And then just the heft of that and tastefulness of that low end and that cinematic darkness, that is like masterful sound design capability there and productional ability. The bit of clipping there is the limiter. Don't worry. really interesting stuff. I actually got so captivated by that I forgot the points I was trying to make. I mean, first of all, how captivating are these soundscapes? Like, they just capture your imagination and your attention immediately. Let me play more, so maybe I'll remember what I wanted to say. Oh yes, the expressiveness of the range here is just stellar. Even just the minute, but would be, with many libraries, would be minute. The change in the range here is super expressive. You get a lot of textural change there. So just even minor moves there take you to a very different expressive world. And I love that, because especially here when it's mapped out so well, and the changes actually have some kind of a significant meaning that's wonderful to use. Grinding demons. I wonder what type of grinding this is talking about. I mean, again, here, just the change there took us in a completely different realm, and not in an abrupt, annoying way, but it's just teleports you into this dimension that's completely contextually relevant to the place you came from. Wonderful. I've never heard a chair be so horrifying sounding. That's terrifying. Terrifying. Again, just incredible source samples. Incredibly captured in how they tie that with the black magic in this box to sound like that. That's truly unnerving, really interesting, and a familiar sound, but still perfectly new in that musical context. I love how fast we can go from that arriving and unnerving kind of wave of stuff to kind of more oop, now we're not safe, but we're behind a wall, and that's incredible sound design and incredible work. That is the limiter. That got really loud suddenly. It's really interesting, very unpredictable, but in kind of an actually creatively interesting way. Sad sack. There's so many things I could say about that, but really interesting stuff in that one. In terms of what kind of comes to mind to me, what I want to do, this was the first one where I go like, ooh, I want to jump in and tweak a Rooney it. Not that I don't want to tweak the others, but this is like, it just speaks to how good these presets are. It's like they are so well prepared that that's the first one out of 13 that I feel like I want to go in there and tweak. And that's not a criticism. It's just like subjective to what you want to do. Blue stacks. Nice. Harponium. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, really, really cool. Again, like such a simple sound. It says string piano here, but beautifully captured. It has like that heft, that weight, that presence, that kind of three-dimensionality, and then just tasteful effects. And this is so vibey. Like this is like it has a soundtrack or a track or an album or a record sound to it. Like it sounds so ready, and there's so much imbued vibe in the soundscape. Like it's so hard to actually create something like that, and you get it just like that. So incredible. get a feeling that gets a lot louder. Yeah, very cool. Gives me kind of like some of those anime vibes from, I wonder which ones. Well, anyway, yeah, again, super simple. That's definitely kind of lo-fi type of pads, but they can make, those can be really difficult to make sort of work and interesting because you need a certain level of staticness to them, but not too much because then it gets boring. But really, really nice for lo-fi, darker stuff. Ghosted Fourth. I thought it said Ghosted Farts, but I'm glad it's not that one. That chord gets a bit too dense for this, but again, really cool. Really liking that grinding tone there. Again, it's unnerving, but in the most best possible fashion. Yeah, that's brilliant. That's like dark ambient heaven right there. What I love about this, again, is that as I push deeper into this mod wheel, it's not just going to add like more distortion and bigger, but it actually added different sounds in there altogether, different qualities, like a bit of that top end rattle, which really, really nicely opens up the expression of this preset. It's like it expands the sound, and that's really brilliant stuff. And unfortunately not super common, but really nice how that happens, because that gives you a lot more. You can be in a way a lot more sort of expressive and courageous with your movements, but it also gives you obviously artistic expression. I really like that. Pixelated gulls. Yeah, I can definitely hear the brotherhood or sisterhood, I don't know, with Falls with this. This is a nice kind of a two libraries meeting closer to one another. Really cool how, I mean, this is of course called Pixelated Gulls, but it doesn't seem to actually have any gulls there, which is actually quite interesting from the kind of sound design preset building perspective, and kind of speaks to the expressive abilities of the samples themselves. Nearing the end of this folder, Vocal Throne. Really nice. I like the core idea here. I wish the top end would sort of kind of sing a bit better. I wish there was a bit more kind of, I guess, legato-ness, like more legato for that kind of to make it simulate that kind of, because they call it vocal throne, because I understand, because it has a lot of those kind of I guess formant-like qualities. Maybe that's not the right term, but a lot of those vocal associated qualities for that sound. So it kind of, I wish it would kind of sing a bit more heart-achingly and flow a bit better. But I guess, I mean, you can definitely go under the hood and tweak things to make it do more. I would probably even consider dividing my kind of bass line on a different contact instance, and then custom tune this top end melody thing with its own parameters. But yeah, really, really beautiful otherwise. Peppered Earth. Love how that begins to bloom when you drive it harder. Really cool. Whatever that gnarly thing coming in every once in a while. Incredible imaging. It really pops out from the speakers. Really, really nice. Again, loving how expressive this mod wheel is. Like there are very significant points where it's the changes, you do subtle changes, but it's like maximally expressive. And it's not like too sensitive. The beauty here is how it's sort of tuned, because you can do a shift like that, a minor shift of maybe like 10 steps, and it's like puts you in a very different place. But again, beautifully tuned, beautifully balanced. And again, the cinematicness of this is really to be praised. Really loving that. When we go all the way there, it's just sort of so pushed back, but it's maximally immersive and engaging. I'm really impressed by sounds that are sort of don't take up a lot of space, but they're so they captivate you, put you in a wherever this song is happening. Last one in the folder, Nightmare Piano. Sorry, what happened there? I seem to have lost consciousness for a moment. But luckily this tiny stick, what do you call these? A splinter in my foot got me out of it. Yeah, I just pressed one key and that's, you can't really do melody or harmony with that, but if you want a nightmarish piano, that's nice. A bit of a break here. I'll go use the gentleman's room. And after that, we're going to go into the designer folder. Again, we got 8 subfolders here. So starting with pads, and I will try to avoid stuff from the highlights, because highlights is pulling from all of these folders, I presume. So I will try and remember those the best I can. But we'll do a few from here. As you can see, the offering is pretty stacked, but we'll go through this. I'll pick the names that seem the most interesting to me, and we'll go from there. Let's do Catharsis. such a beautiful sound. It sounds so simple and unassuming in a way, but it's so delicate. Like I'm imagining like a scene in a movie or series, and you're looking for that kind of dark, melancholic, warm thing. This is like so expressive. Again, there's the combination of not taking up a lot of space, but it tells a story with that minimal information. That's really, really difficult to do. Just out of curiosity, I didn't push this because I thought it wasn't contextual to the music that I was writing there, but I just want to hear what the top end sounds like. Yeah, that's super cool. I would probably automate it to go from that super thin, lo-fi, brittle sound into this fuller pad sound. Again, really nice connections to folds there in terms of the vibe. Finding replicants. The replicators. Okay. Let's do In the Embers. Yeah, super cool. For me, the X factor here is definitely the details in the mixing, the sound design, the choices of effects. They're just so polished. Like I couldn't really come up with a lot of examples, but they're like this could be this preset. In a way, I've heard many companies attempt, to create that, but it doesn't have the X factor. It doesn't have the cinematic soul, the essence, the details there that put in the vibe in there. And it's like a really detailed process to be able to pull that off. And this is really like the magic of probably not only this library, but this company. So let's do Peaceful Descent. Okay, yeah, that's to me, that's a 10 out of 10. That's really like really cool. What I love, I mean, this top end, you begin to hear some of those kind of vocal qualities. It's kind of like that pitched male voice. Really, really, really cool. I don't know what it really is. I mean, we got foiled in terms of objects here, and we got pen vibes. Maybe there's like a synthy element there. I don't know. Really cool. Again, like the detail there is just insane, and that dark that bass, that sort of perfectly gritty. Very, very great stuff for dark ambient or like darker other stuff. I mean, so far, so good is such a good name that we have to do that one. Yeah, that's stupid good. Again, what I love here, both ends, both the starker tone, perfect. Top end, again, it's not going for like just additional layers, but it's going for an entirely different layer. Obviously, we're going between literal layers here, but still creatively very cool. This sound is just so beautiful. Very, very nice. Out of curiosity, dragged. The question was whether something as chaotic as dragging a chair across the floor could be done so consistently as to create a steady pitch. Ooh, indeed you can. Of course, as we don't accept half measures, this then also had to be done repeated time and time again. Had to be repeated time and... I can't read. Had to be repeated time and again to create multiple round robins. A surprisingly beautiful sustained note. Yeah, that's really nice. I wonder if it's like a steel-legged or like a metal-legged chair on a stone floor. Yeah, that is really, really beautiful. Never thought a chair could sound so good. Okay. Let's do Tundra Bloom. Incredible. Again, what here is so amazing is the simplicity, but just how deep the vibe is, how deep the mojo is. It is really impressive to me. Let's move on to motions, because otherwise we'll never get through this. Let's do Christina's Dome. I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but I mean, especially when Christina's Dome is combined with massaged and overblown. Again, there's so many questions, Christina, but it's none of my business. Yeah, definitely something simpler would be good for that sound. Divide us all. Wait a minute, did we do this one? No. Yeah, definitely need to listen to these because they don't want to do everything out of the box. So you gotta adjust to the sound of it. Really cool. Inner track, I would probably keep it more sparse because just one note can speak so much, and you can hear all the details from that just so nicely. So you got to give it space to do its thing. Kodamas bless. Bit of limiter clipperoonie. Still a bit of limiter clipperoonie. Bit of a big dynamic range there. Opportunity knocks. But I don't. Really interesting sound. Makes you think, you know, what can I do with this? Yeah, like that pitching at the end. Slow emotion. Really liking that. Sounds like a cello there at the edge, which it isn't, but, or it doesn't seem to be. They awaken. Yeah. Nice little lo-fi edge there. Drones, moving into that one. A month in solitary. Super cool. I love this stuff here. Again, it's so simple, but it's so hard to do. Very captivating drones. And again, something that this reminds me of when it came to folds, I think, especially, was as you begin to push this, it's not just a question of more reverb, but it kind of pushes the whole soundscape to the back and expands it there. And you go like, ooh, wow, that big world there. And then you can come back in again. And that's really difficult to do. Yeah, very impressive. And again, the textures are just super, super nicely done. Blown into the void. again, extremely impressive. Very, very nice. Geostationary. Very, very nice. This like instant cinematic readiness. Beautiful. Again, the noise here. Beautifully, beautifully constructed there. Monolith revealed. Yeah, extremely nice. I think this is kind of like a paradise for sort of sound world builders. If you do sort of more ambient type of stuff, this is really like very impressive. These can sound very simplistic, these sounds, but if you don't really have the ear for the experience for this type of stuff, but start pairing these sounds with like a movie scene, or if you're creating ambient of any sort, it's all about the mood. It's all about how well can you lose yourself in there, and these make it really, really easy. So extremely impressive. Reactor core. Yeah, cinematic perfection. Yeah, again, something like that can work so well in the right scene. Saito's Promise. How can I skip that? love that kind of gritty, broken, droney stuff. Let's do one more. Too much gravity. Yeah, they really nailed these ones super, super nicely. Going into textures. Abrasion and contusion. Right. Yeah. Very immersive. I didn't know that mountain geese can sound so intimidating, but there you go. When that low note hit, I want to say fuck off. Like that's that's so good. That's my first honest response. Not that I want to swear or but it's just like that's so like cinematically impactful. It's incredibly good. These are kind of like interesting, like textures. The naming I understand because they have more stuff on top and more texture and more sort of non-droney elements going on, but there's definitely a lot of overlap here with the drones. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Let's do one more. Cool. Those textures. Let's move into keys. This one is called Amber Tines. Really liking that. Again, it's a beautiful marriage of kind of the simplicity of the core sound, but layered on top of this rich, complex, productional sound design layer that just brings it to life beautifully. Cool. Pretty rich. Crying piano. Nice. Actually really like that tone. Not that I would really play stuff like that with it, but Again, that simple reverb wash beautifully extends that sound. Very cool. Loose Company. Super nice. Great for a lot of lo-fi key-based stuff. Moving into bass, the fish folder. That's gnarly. That's beautifully sort of muted in a really nice way. In the right context, that's going to pair really nicely with some top end stuff that's sort of more open. Brilliant. That crispy edge there is really difficult to create. And I think doing that from a kind of a sample standpoint, it sounds really good. It's just crumble, a huge rumbling synth sound reminiscent of a slow motion demolition. All right. And then what is it? Super solid analog saw. Okay, cool. So I wonder what they did for that. That crispy edge is really, really, really nice. Next one. Good example of something that's going for that like really lo-fi simple sound, but it has a really nice modern edge to it. Wub wub. Yeah, those have a lot of like that sort of almost anxiety-inducing low-end rumble. We got some sound effects here. that low end rumble there. Really nicely done. See, these seem to have a lot of, understandably, a lot of overlap with, that could be like a texture, could be in like a rich drone thing. Yeah, that's actually really cool. And again, I wouldn't describe that as a sound effect, but just usually it is the case that there's quite a bit of overlap between folders that are named like that. Of course, it can be difficult to always find a detectable pitch, but again, that could be in the drone folder for me. That's absolutely fantastic. Brilliant stuff. Let's do Into the Abyss. Yeah, that definitely sounds very hellish. Very cool. It's going to work really well. Let's do a couple of more. Very, very cool. Storms are coming. Seems to be like more like a one-hit type of thing. Thump and grind. Maybe don't now. Cool. Yeah, I mean, this could be in the motion folder for me as well. We've got some leads in here. Super nice plucky sound. Again, has that lo-fi edge to it for sure. I do like myself some of that. Sorry, my playing is getting super sloppy at this point because this has been going on for pretty long. It's been a long day, so a bit rusty there. All right, that's designed, or some of it. Going into foundations, go instruments, and see what this sounds like. So this would be probably the kind of bare bones version of the instruments themselves, just to give a reference. Very nice, kind of a lo-fi piano for you right there out of the gate. Really liking that. That's a really nice sound. Delicate whispering clarinets are interrupted with fluctuating delicate organic pulses. Subtle when heard at their played pitch and increasingly much more dramatic when slowed down. Yeah, these are really nice. Very nice. Their reed quality there comes through super well. So this sounds like a string instrument. Let's check. Wild, densely layered collection of ricochets and aggressive bowing techniques on acoustic guitar. Nice. Very nice. Super, super cool. Rototoms, pretty cool inclusion. So I'm not usually a big fan of kind of like angelic, glossy pianos, but this is probably one of the best takes on that, because it has this kind of nice, hopeful, but sort of maybe a bit withdrawn brightness to it. So I do like that. That's very nice for all kinds of sound designy stuff. Let's check what this is. Twisting tremolo strings. A blend of stringed instruments are used to extend the range for even greater usability. Okay, so they don't specifically say what they are. Sounds like, orchestral stuff. Really liking those, even in this sort of simpler form. Very, very expressive objects. That's a super cool one. Sounds like it's already sort of getting like a mixture of analog and digital distortion there. So yeah, this is the chair. This is, one of my favorites. This is really cool. This sounds like some kind of a string instrument. And then there's like VHS degradation on it and some other distortion. Yeah, very cool. Foiled. Glad it's not soiled. Sizzle and rattle. Made by wrapping double bass string in tin foil and playing with a bow. Yeah. I'm really impressed by these. I expected them to sort of be far simpler in their nature, but these are actually very, very expressive and versatile. What is that? Gate, a moment of inspiration heard while walking in the countryside. Playing a condenser and contact mics were recordings of a gate in a field, which has a harmonious resonant behavior. When when excited by its handle in exactly the right way. I know how you feel, Gate. I sympathize. Beautiful sounds, and the sources are really special. I'm really impressed how they could actually turn those into instruments. Yeah, this is black metal. Let's go. Really digging that distortion. Motorized by taking a static exciter in the form, that's what I call myself, of a hand fan and carefully positioning it to inconsistently strike a lively resonator in the form of guitar strings, a beautiful contrast is found, with harmonics and rhythms wandering around the steady drone of the fan motor. That's cool. So that was the objects folder. This can be a bit misleading because you think, oh, there's just like sounds of a bottle being, I don't know, tapped with a pen or something. But they're actually like all playable things. They're just sort of described in terms of the source sound. Yeah, just looking at the descriptions here, thin metal, Trey being excited aggressively with expressive FM synthesis while playing a collection of stones, stationary clips, and newspaper were being added and removed to control the intensity of the high end across the keyboard. So yeah, this is very specific stuff. This is really, really cool stuff. I will genuinely say, like, these approaches can sort of fall flat on their faces in many instances. I don't remember many cases where the source sounds are this out there in a most, I mean that in a most positive way. And the results are so lucrative. Like, these sound super interesting, genuinely interesting sounds that become their own thing, but they obviously have a lot of familiar qualities as well. But this is actually really, really good sampling. Yep, me likey any kind of broken electronic stuff. That's really cool. That has a beautiful balance of things. Casavox, a grand casa drum covered in rice and a xiao flute are carefully combined electronically to become an unidentifiable musical entity. Yeah, that's a really, really solid one. Beautiful, sort of open, airy, but hopeful sound. Yeah, the kind of distortive edge there is really, really unique and really well done. And you hear these sounds every once in a while if you're, you know, interacting with everyday objects, and you hear those resonances when those objects are excited, if you will. Just like I am. I'm really excited. But really happy to see them capture those sounds and actually do so in a really stellar fashion, because it must not be easy. Really liking this. Again, like they talk about the transients, those are really popping out of the speakers super nicely. Really interesting sound. I wish there you could control the intensity of the cage. I guess you could pitch some of that, which would affect kind of the tempo of it. Yeah, this is one of my favorites, this chair. Really cool. And obviously you begin to, as it is presumably sounds like it's metal, you begin to get some of those brass-like qualities. It sounds like you're the brass section of your orchestra. You've just told them to go crazy and do all kinds of weird, quirky things, but it still sounds a bit like stranger, like otherworldly in that sense. So, yeah, excellent job. That's really cool. You can do some really nice soundscapes with this kind of atonal stuff. Upright piano being played with a friction mallet. I don't even know what a friction mallet is. But this is really cool for soundscape building. Yeah, that's super pleasant sounding, sort of crackling. I would think that would be like, maybe like, no cornflakes, but like Rice Krispies or something like that. that's deeply disturbing. Sounds like some monster is crunching on your bones or some. Well, maybe not. Maybe after a few hours of crunching on them. And also has that kind of a vocal quality to it, which makes it even more disturbing. But it seems like we have come to the end of this review. A lot of stuff to go through, as you probably see from the length of this video. I don't know how long this is, but long enough, I'm sure. And also, we didn't even, scratch the surface here. The only folder we did entirely is foundations because it's rather easy, but there's so much more in here that we didn't get a chance to look at. So firstly, I really want to touch on that because the scope of this is super impressive. I'm sure, absolutely sure we missed a ton of diamonds in here because we're just kind of randomly shooting in the dark, but yeah, quite comprehensive. So there's a lot of stuff here in the designed folder that we didn't get a chance to have a look at, but at least all of the highlights, all of the foundations, and I hope that kind of gives you an idea. But I get a strong sense here that is kind of like just scraping the surface here. I have my own like very specific type of favorite things that I like in here. I think the way they have this ability to take simple but beautifully captured sound sources that are extraordinarily well recorded and captured, which gives them this kind of three-dimensionality and solid impact as they come out of the speakers. And then when you layer on top of that these sound design elements, these production elements, and you mix them to sound as good as they do, you really have a really good recipe for things. I really think their ability to create these kind of dark, cinematic soundscapes and those kind of, not necessarily sound design stuff, but that also, I mean, drones, textures, and I think sound effects have a lot of overlap depending on how you define those things and how you write music and what you want to write. But the kind of darker, cinematic, maybe drone-leaning sounds that have this beautiful extension of the soundscape and the sound design aspect. These are really probably like some of my favorites in here. This kind of reminds me more closely of Strands than it does Folds, because Folds is sort of more specialized around the voice. And it does come across, whereas Strands was kind of a selection of, like this is, of a multitude of different things. I think Folds did have a bunch of other stuff in there, but it does come across sort of vocal-centric more. But yeah, all these like dark, cinematic, super emotional, super soulful things here are my absolute favorites. In the pads, then again, some of the motions have more motion or sometimes less than you expect, but again, that's another folder that has a lot of overlap here. So I mean, again, it's so difficult to create something so simple that's beautiful and captivating and gets your attention. And what's so special is that these sound, with some other libraries, you use the term kind of record ready. Like you play a sound and you're like, yep, that sounds like a record, meaning that it has that specific magic in there. And these have that. And that's really rare and it's really difficult to do, which speaks volumes about the mixing capabilities and the productional capabilities that they have in this company. But instead of record ready, I would say like cinema ready. Depends on, I don't know if you write series or movies or game music, but this has that readiness. Like you play something and you're immediately transported in that world. And I think that's, one of the biggest selling points of this, because I always say this, but I think it's a massive thing that isn't being talked about enough, is that when you buy a library, you don't just get cool sounds, but you get to sort of bypass years of mixing experience, years of sound design experience, years of production experience, and you get to take those skills that these people have and lay your hands on them immediately. And I think that's really the biggest selling point of some of my favorite libraries. And I'm really glad to see that Void and Vista they deliver in that department as well. So yeah, that's really a point I can't emphasize too much, because I can take a sound from here, like a beautiful droney, soundscapey thing, and I can just start playing, and I can have a really close to finished track, assuming I can write it that fast, but as fast as I can write. And the mixing process obviously depends on what other things you have going on there. But the point is, you can get really, really ready sounding stuff. Granted that you're listening to the instrument and what it's doing, and you know what you're doing on the composition front, of course. No library, unfortunately, well, maybe not unfortunately, no library can just write music for you. You have to be the one who pulls it together from all angles to deliver an interesting and relevant piece of art. But yeah, I mean, just 10 out of 10 diamonds in here, especially in that cinematic, droney, soundscapey department. Really stellar pads in here. This definitely has like a lo-fi tint to it, as I think all of the Void and Vista libraries have. But it's not like this happy, uplifting lo-fi aspect, but rather like a dark and slightly twisted lo-fi aspect of it. And when I say twisted, I don't mean horror, but like broken. And I feel like they really appreciate the beauty in brokenness. Like that's really evident to me listening to or playing any of their libraries. They have this deep appreciation for broken things. And I think it's that thing that gives them the edge to create these beautiful, nuanced textures that just tell a story. And that's super, super difficult to do. And you can have a kind of, at first glance, a very simple sound, but then it's just imbued with this vibe. Like all the textures are perfect. The imaging is beautiful, stellar. Again, one of the things that this library does that I fell in love with Folds is the three-dimensionality. Like you push into, it's not just reverb coming in, but it's this three-dimensional expansion of like going way out there and then coming back in. It's incredible how they do that, and it's super rare. I only maybe know a few companies that can pull that off. So that's super nice. And also one of the things we mentioned earlier is that a lot of these presets are extremely inspiring in terms of their design. Because again, one of the simple things is that with a lot of sounds, when you push the mod wheel, you just tend to get more of that sound. You tend to get less filtering, more distortion, more reverb. It just becomes bigger. Those are obviously in here, some of those presets as well, but I'm personally the most impressed by sounds that just do a completely different thing when you move, the mod wheel upwards or that way. So you go from very different soundscapes to another, which first and foremost is extremely inspiring as a composer. Like, again, I use these tools to get inspired so I can write more and better music. And anytime a tool can do that, I know that it's made by like real creatives who care about that aspect, because made by artists, really, because they understand that, like, they want their tools to be not just cool sounding, but used to inspire people and create music. So I love that you have this complete different mind shift with a lot of these presets, where this range of the mod wheel does something completely different to this one. So you can, like it says, morph between different soundscapes. And then sometimes we do something else. It could be that it's just kind of two different aspects of the same sound. But how they've managed to map all the effects and all the changes in such a nice way to this mod wheel range. Like sometimes I'll do a tiny shift of like 10 steps in the MIDI realm, and you get a beautiful amount of expressiveness there. But it's never like too much or too little. You feel very much connected to that, and it's super expressive. But it's like with some libraries, sometimes it's too sensitive and you're like, oh, you really struggle to dig in there. But these are super finely tuned, which again, you can't do that unless you think artistically. You can't do that unless you think creatively. I'm sure there are many technical aspects that go into mapping that and making it work that way. But it's really impressive, the level of control and expressiveness you can get with how some of these presets are mapped. So again, the inspiration there with this different mind shift, different approach is super valuable to me as a composer. And again, there's just the expressiveness and the inspiration is pretty unparalleled, I would say. So yeah. I think before I ramble any more than that, we're gonna leave it at that, and you can let me know if you have this already at home or at your studio. I don't know when this video is gonna go live. I'll try and do it as soon as possible, but pretty pressed on time, so I'm happy to even be able to have filmed this for you. So let me know what you think, and certainly, as always, let me know what you think of this video. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. I'll see you next time. Finished.